Hey, this is Dave DeCamp from antiwar.com. This is anti-war news for Monday, September 22nd, 2025. All right, first thing, we completed our fundraiser at antiwar.com, so I want to thank everybody who pitched in. I really appreciate all the support. This is how antiwar.com is able to function. We need to rely on our readers and listeners of this show to get by, to pay the bills. So again, we really, really appreciate the support. The other thing, I had a good time last week on Thursday at the Integrity Media Journalism Awards. Integrity Media is the organization that put on the event, and it was really great. Met a lot of very cool people. I'll talk more about that at the end of the show if you're interested, but congratulations to Scott Horton, our editorial director at antiwar.com. He won one of the awards, and I got to hang out with him, which was cool. But again, I'll get into that a bit at the end of the show. So the first story at the top of antiwar.com today, we have a lot of news to get into. But the first one here, the IDF kills 4 U.S. citizens, including 3 children in Lebanon. So an Israeli drone, this article's from Jason Ditz, by the way. An Israeli drone fired 2 missiles at a car and a motorcycle on a road in Bint Jebel in southern Lebanon on Sunday, killing at least 5 people, including 3 children. The Lebanese health ministry confirmed the deaths and also reported that 2 people were wounded. 4 of the 5, including all 3 of the children, were U.S. citizens, and that is according to the Lebanese government. They were a father and his 3 children who were killed. So an American citizen and his 3 children were killed by the IDF. The mother was also present and among the wounded, and according to the foreign ministry, she is in critical condition. So Lebanese President Joseph Aoun slammed the attack, calling it a massacre and calling for the international community to pressure Israel into complying with the November ceasefire. And what he's referring to there is the ceasefire deal that was signed in November 2024 that Israel has flagrantly violated in so many different ways and has launched thousands of attacks. And as we've covered on this show, they're launching airstrikes in Lebanon, in southern Lebanon, but sometimes in eastern Lebanon, sometimes further north, almost every day. And it gets very little media coverage. And there has not been any Hezbollah attacks on Israel in this time since that November ceasefire. And they're doing this despite the Lebanese government saying that they're going to comply with the U.S. and Israeli demands and disarm Hezbollah. Not that it's clear if that's really possible. But despite the Lebanese government saying that they're going to do these things, and they have cleared Hezbollah from south of the Litani River, as far as we know, or they're working to dismantle weapons stores and things like that. Despite that, Israel continues to bomb Lebanon almost every day. And here they have massacred American citizens. And we'll see if we hear anything about it from the Trump administration. But what has been the pattern when the Israeli military or Israeli settlers kill American citizens? You usually don't hear too much about it. And so the situation here, so Israel, they claimed that they killed a Hezbollah figure in the attack. They did not identify who. There's been no confirmation from the Lebanese side that a Hezbollah guy was killed. And Israel acknowledged that they killed several uninvolved civilians. And they said that it is under review. But again, I mean, I saw pictures of the aftermath. You know, it's tough to know on X, but of the children in the car, and it was just horrific. There was really nothing left of them. And these are American citizens, and Israel's able to do things like this with impunity. I would be surprised if we see the Trump administration try to really do anything about this or change anything when it comes to this unconditional support for Israel. All right, so the next one here, Israel's killing of 31 Yemeni journalists, deadliest attack in 16 years. So this is from the Committee to Protect the Journalists, and they said that this is the deadliest global attack on journalists in 16 years. And these were Israel's targeted strikes on 2 newspaper offices in Yemen's capital, which killed 31 journalists and media support workers on September 10th. This was the September 26th newspaper. They were the first to name the 31 killed by multiple strikes on its office and that of the Yemen newspaper, both in the government's Moral Guidance Directorate's headquarters. All but one of the dead worked for the two outlets. And I know there's also a child who went to work with, I don't know if it was the child's parent, but was at one of the newspaper offices when it was bombed, who was also killed. And this is according to the Committee to Protect Journalists, the single deadliest attack on journalists since the 2009 Maguindanao massacre in the Philippines. I apologize if I pronounced that wrong. 32 journalists were killed in that attack when a convoy was ambushed. And of course, they've killed over 200 journalists in Gaza throughout the nearly 2 years of genocide in the Gaza Strip. All right, so the next one here, Netanyahu fumes at Palestinian state recognition. So the UK, Australia, Canada, and Portugal all announced on Sunday their formal recognition of a Palestinian state, a step that comes a day before the opening of the UN General Assembly in New York. So British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said in a post on X, quote, "Today, to revive the hope of peace for the Palestinians and Israelis and a two-state solution, the United Kingdom formally recognizes the state of Palestine," end quote. In response to the announcements, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed that there would never be a Palestinian state and bragged about his work over the years to prevent one. So Netanyahu said, quote, "It's not going to happen. There will be no Palestinian state to the west of the Jordan River. For years, I have prevented the creation of that terror state against tremendous pressure, both domestic and from abroad," end quote. The Israeli leader also said Israel would continue expanding Jewish settlements in the Israeli-occupied West Bank. He said, quote, "Moreover, we have doubled the Jewish settlement in Judea and Samaria, and we will continue on this path," end quote. So the Trump administration has discouraged its allies from recognizing a Palestinian state, and they've banned Palestinian Authority officials from attending the General Assembly while welcoming the former al-Qaeda commander who now runs Syria. Trump has previously threatened a trade deal with Canada over its plans to recognize Palestine. They went ahead and did it anyway. Netanyahu said that he will announce his response to the Western countries recognizing Palestine after he returns from the U.S. So he's going there for the UN General Assembly in New York, and he's expected to make his fourth visit to the White House this year after the General Assembly. And I think there he's probably going to try to get support, for whatever move he wants to make in response to this recognition. We know that he's considering officially annexing parts of the West Bank. But he's going to want to get support from President Trump for whatever he decides to do next. Mike Huckabee has made clear that, this is Huckabee. He's basically said that the U.S. would not oppose Israel if it decides to go ahead with the annexation. But Netanyahu might be looking for some sort of tangible, actual support from the U.S. in doing this, or some kind of pledge that no matter, the reaction, that the U.S. is going to back them in doing this. And Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, they called for the annexation to happen right away in response to these countries recognizing a Palestinian state, and saying, Netanyahu, do it right now. So I guess we'll see what his response is going to be by the end of this month, I would guess. I believe the meeting at the White House is supposed to happen on September 29th or so. Let me actually double check this story here. Yeah, September 29th. All right, so the next story here, the IDF and Starvation kill 75 Palestinians in Gaza over 24 hours. Gaza's health ministry said on Sunday that Israeli forces killed at least 71 Palestinians and wounded 304 over the previous 24-hour period, as the IDF continues its destruction campaign in Gaza City and attacks elsewhere in the Strip. The health ministry said that another 4 bodies of Palestinians killed by previous Israeli attacks were also recovered. And on top of the violent deaths, another 4 Palestinians starved to death amid the ongoing famine caused by the Israeli siege. Al Jazeera reported that Israeli strikes on Sunday morning in Gaza City's Sabra neighborhood killed 25 members of the same family. You see this picture here of their funeral. If you look closely at this picture, you see the body bags. You see they're actually on top of other body bags there. Just another massacre. in Gaza. And Israel's goals for Gaza City, as we've been covering, include the forced displacement of the entire civilian population and the destruction of the entire city. They plan to raze every building to the ground. Reuters reported that the IDF continued to blow up homes in Gaza City on Sunday and that a pregnant woman and her 2 children were among the people killed in the city. The Israeli military claims more than 450,000 Palestinians have fled Gaza City so far, while Hamas has put the number around 300,000 and says that 900,000 civilians remain. And Israeli attacks also targeted central Gaza on Sunday, where a strike hit near an UNRWA clinic in the Prez refugee camp, killing 8 people, including 4 children and 2 women. All right, so the next one here, this is really shameful stuff. Trump is preparing a $6 billion arms package for Israel. So this is by Kyle Anzalone at the Libertarian Institute. He wrote this up on Friday. So the White House has informed Congress that it is preparing a massive arms sale to Israel, including attack helicopters and military vehicles. The weapons will be paid for with U.S. military aid. So this is a U.S.-funded deal. And according to the Wall Street Journal, the total value of the weapons deal is $6 billion. The sale is for $3.8 billion for 30 AH-64 Apache helicopters and a $1.9 billion deal for 3,250 infantry assault vehicles. And these, the U.S. is going to pay for this with the foreign military financing, which is a form of military aid through the State Department, where the U.S. gives foreign governments money to purchase U.S. weapons. And these, I think it's expected to take a few years before these weapons will actually be delivered. But this comes just showing the again, full-throated support for Israel, no matter what they do, no matter what atrocities they commit in Gaza, or what countries they bomb. They could bomb a U.S. ally that hosts U.S. troops and, still get all this military aid from the U.S. All right, so the next one here, Trump says bad things will happen if the U.S. doesn't get Bagram. So President Trump on Saturday warned that bad things would happen if Afghanistan did not agree to hand over the Bagram air base back to the U.S. military, an idea that's been rejected by the Taliban-led Afghan government. So this is something, so last week Trump was in the UK, I think on Thursday, and while he was there, he said something about Bagram Air Base, which was the U.S.'s biggest military base in Afghanistan during the 20-year war. He said, we're going to take it back. And then the Taliban said, no, you're not. And then this is Trump's response. He wrote on Truth Social, quote, if Afghanistan does not give Bagram Air Base back to those that built it, the United States of America, bad things are going to happen, end quote. So Trump claims that the U.S. built Bagram, but it was actually built by the Soviet Union. So is he saying that the Russians should get it back? But as I mentioned, Bagram became the largest U.S. military base in Afghanistan during the 20-year war, and the U.S. pulled its forces out of the airfield during the withdrawal in 2021. Trump said during his visit to the U.K. last week that one of the reasons he wants Bagram is because he claims that it's an hour away from where China makes its nuclear weapons. So it's near China. That's kind of been his talking point. And he said similar things when he was on the campaign trail. So, this actually isn't anything new from Trump. This is something he mentioned, I believe, a few times while he was campaigning. I don't know if he said explicitly that we're going to take it back. I think he might have said that offhand once. But what he did say was that if he was in charge during the Afghanistan withdrawal, he would not have given up Bagram, basically saying he would have kept troops in Afghanistan. He said that they would have kept Bagram and left 4,000 troops at the airbase. So in response to Trump's latest comments, the Taliban-led government, known officially as the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, called on the U.S. president to uphold the Doha Agreement, referring to the deal that was negotiated by the first Trump administration and led to President Biden's withdrawal from Afghanistan. This is an Afghan government spokesman who said, quote, under the Doha Agreement, the United States pledged that it will not use or threaten force against the territorial integrity or political independence of Afghanistan, nor interfere in its internal affairs. Therefore, it is necessary that they remain faithful to their commitments, end quote. So Trump has suggested that the U.S. may be working on a diplomatic deal with Afghanistan on Bagram, but that was rejected by Fasihudin Fitrat, the chief of staff of Afghanistan's defense ministry. He said, quote, recently some voices claim that we are in talks with the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan to negotiate the return of Bagram airfield, or that we are seeking a political settlement after failing to take it by force. We assure the people of Afghanistan that no agreement over even an inch of our soil is possible, end quote. So, I mean, what is Trump threatening here? Is he going to reinvade Afghanistan, go to war for another 20 years? It's one of those things I just kind of, I don't know. It's just absurd. But the next one here, Trump says that 3 killed in the latest U.S. bombing of a boat in Latin America. So President Trump said on Friday that the U.S. military bombed another boat in U.S. Southern Command's area of responsibility, which includes the Caribbean and most of South Africa. The president claimed without evidence that U.S. intelligence showed that the boat was carrying drugs and that 3 so-called narco-terrorists were killed. While Trump did not specify exactly where the bombing occurred, previous U.S. military strikes on boats targeted vessels in the Caribbean that left Venezuela. This time he didn't say where, he just said it was in Southcom area of responsibility, which again is the Caribbean and South America. So Trump wrote on Truth Social, quote, on my orders, the Secretary of War ordered a lethal kinetic strike on a vessel affiliated with a designated terrorist organization conducting narco trafficking in U.S. Southcom area of responsibility. Intelligence confirmed the vessel was trafficking illegal narcotics and was transiting along a known narco trafficking passage en route to poison Americans. The strike killed 3 male narco terrorists aboard the vehicle, which was in international waters, end quote. Aboard the vessel. Trump's post included a video that purported to show the strike on the boat. He did not specify when the boat was bombed, but it marks at least the 3rd time that the U.S. military has taken such action against vessels in the region. According to numbers released by Trump, at least 17 people have been extrajudicially executed by the U.S. military since this campaign began. And the first strike was on September 2nd. If you remember last week, I had a story where Trump said that they bombed a 3rd boat, but he didn't release anything about it. So not clear if this is that 3rd boat or if it's a 4th boat. We don't really know. He didn't put a date on it or anything. And Democrats are looking to rein in the U.S. military campaign and have introduced war powers resolutions that would stop the strikes on boats. They're warning against this turning into a war with Venezuela, which of course this is that's what I think this is ultimately all about, is a push to pressure and a new regime change attempt against Venezuela. And if as we've been talking about, Trump in his post, he said, if you bring fentanyl to the U.S., you're going to get blown up or whatever. But fentanyl does not go through Venezuela. I believe all of it basically goes through Mexico. I know some comes through Canada as well, but, fentanyl, Venezuela is just not where it's coming from. And they're kind of using people's outrage over the fentanyl deaths, the opiate deaths, that whole crisis here in the United States to push what seems to be another agenda. Of course, you got Marco Rubio, who's always wanted regime change in Venezuela. Venezuela is sitting on the biggest oil reserves in the world. So, there could be some other motives here. And the other thing is that Venezuela's government has been cooperating on deportations, and Reuters reported on Saturday that Maduro sent a letter to Trump after the first strike on a boat saying that he wants to talk. He wants to talk to Rick Grinnell, who's Trump's special envoy, who actually went to Venezuela back in January, right after Trump's inauguration. He went to Venezuela. I believe he talked to Maduro, and he brought home some Americans who were being held in jail in Venezuela. And sources told Reuters that deportation flights are still happening twice a week to Venezuela. But besides that, Trump is making threats over deportations. So this is what he's on Saturday. Trump threatened Venezuela, saying that if they don't accept people who he portrayed as prisoners that they want to deport, that there would be significant consequences. This is what Trump said, quote, thousands of people have been badly hurt and even killed by these monsters. Get them the hell out of our country right now, or the price you pay will be incalculable, end quote. And again, it does seem like Maduro has made clear he's willing to work with Trump. But Trump is being steered on this by Rubio. Trump might have his own reasons to want to go along with this, of course, as well. All right, so the next one here, the U.S. claims to kill senior ISIS member in Syria. This one is from Kyle Anzalone at the Libertarian Institute. So the U.S. and Iraqi forces conducted a joint air raid against the Islamic State in Syria, claiming to kill a senior member of the terrorist organization. A statement released by CENTCOM said that forces conducted a raid that resulted in the death of a senior ISIS operative who posed a direct threat to the U.S. homeland. That's what they said in the statement. The Pentagon claimed the operation killed Omar Abdul Qadir. When it comes to these ISIS, they always say, oh, we killed another ISIS leader. Seems like they always have people to replace them. And this is Syria, where the U.S. is also backing the Al-Qaeda guys who took over the country. And, of course, there's a lot of fluidity, between the two groups. We've seen members go from ISIS to HTS and probably back and forth. But they're saying that they conducted this raid. So the U.S., I think it's important for people to know that the U.S. is still involved in military actions in both Syria and Iraq. All right, so the next one here, Syrian army and the SDF trade blame as 7 civilians killed in strikes. So this one's from Jason Ditz. The village of Tina in eastern Aleppo government was attacked overnight with at least 7 civilians killed and 4 others wounded, according to media reports. Who actually did it is a matter of substantial, who launched the attack is a matter of disagreement. So this is kind of strange. You have the Syrian government claiming that the Kurdish SDF attacked a village that's under their control, under SDF control. The SDF is saying that it was a government. They're saying it was pro-government forces who were loyal to Turkey. So that suggests it could be, I forget what they call them. I think the Syrian National Army, the Turkish proxy in northern Syria. That's been fighting against the Kurds, and the fighting was much heavier earlier this year. It seems like things have calmed down in that area. But the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said that the attack was carried out by Syrian army personnel, so all signs pointing to the government being responsible for this. And also Shara, the Syrian de facto president, is saying that the Turkey might attack the SDF if they don't fully integrate into the Syrian military by December. All right, so the next one here, the War Department. Oh, I skipped one. Trump threatens CODEPINK with RICO charges. So this is from our blog. We reprinted it from People's Dispatch. Articles by Natalie Marks, and activists and the anti-war group CODEPINK confronted U.S. President Donald Trump and his cabinet at a restaurant in Washington, D.C. on September 9th. So Trump went to eat at a restaurant in D.C. Protesters, including members of CODEPINK, confronted him, said free Palestine, called him the Hitler of our time. And Trump said, hey, get him out of here. And then Trump said he was asked about this, and he said what these people are doing to our country is really subversive. He suggested that they could bring up RICO charges against the protesters. He said that they should be put in jail. He says Pam Bondi is looking into charging them. And, of course, CODEPINK, I mean, if people aren't familiar, they're always disrupting. I really like how they're always on Capitol Hill bothering the members of Congress who are, in the tank for Israel and about wars and everything. Trump is saying he wants to lock them up. And they're also, you see them disrupt the Senate hearings. Sometimes I love that when they were doing that to Blinken. I remember a few good ones then, but this is their thing. It doesn't really, what I like about CODEPINK is it doesn't matter who's in power. They're going to be opposing whatever war the current administration, current people in power are supporting, and for the nearly 2 years now, it's been supporting Israel in Gaza. All right, so the next one here, the War Department, Mulls using Kirk assassination for recruitment. So officials at the U.S. War Department are considering using the assassination of conservative political activist Charlie Kirk as a tool for a new military recruiting campaign, and this was reported by NBC. The report said that officials are considering using chapters of Turning Point USA, a political organization founded by Kirk, as recruitment centers. Possible slogans for the effort that officials have discussed include, Charlie has awakened a generation of warriors. So apparently some officials are resistant to the idea because they're warning that a recruitment campaign could be seen as the Pentagon capitalizing on Kirk's death. And I think that's what a lot of people would see it as. And Kirk, he never served. He was not in the military, so it's not like he was a veteran. And so in response, there was a statement from Sean Parnell, who's the Pentagon spokesman, and he appeared to deny the report. He said, quote, "The media is so desperate to attack this administration's success that they are now inventing lies about our recruitment efforts. Leadership matters, and under the strong leadership of President Trump and Secretary Hegseth, men and women are coming out in droves to serve this great nation," end quote. So while denying that, we're still seeing, the War Department kind of use Kirk's death to push their agenda, to push their, it's hard to explain what the Hegseth and what is now the War Department, they keep, they put out these videos and, everything is now, our war fighters are warriors, war. And they're trying to fit Charlie Kirk's death into that. And not only that, this is really, to me, despicable, disgusting to see. As a Christian myself, Hegseth posted a video of him saying the Lord's Prayer. And it's like a montage video of U.S. military equipment fire. You see missiles being fired, an armada of warships, fighter jets, bombers, tanks, while he's saying the Lord's Prayer. Just really, sickening stuff to me. All right, so the next one here, and also I saw, obviously a lot of people were watching on Sunday the memorial for Charlie Kirk. I didn't really watch much of it, but I saw the wife, I forget her name, Erica Kirk, I want to say, but she went up and she said she forgave the killer, which I thought was really powerful. And then you see Trump went on after her and said something like, "Oh, Charlie didn't hate his opponents, but I hate my opponents. That's the difference between me and Charlie. Sorry, Erica." Like after her speech, which I just thought, man. But anyway, we're seeing Trump, it's like, from what I've seen of him, whenever he's asked about Kirk, he doesn't really seem like he's that beat up about it. And he didn't seem like he was that beat up about it at this event. All right, so the next one here, Finland president says we must be willing to fight Russia. So Finnish President Alexander Stubb has said that European security guarantees for a post-war Ukraine must include a readiness to fight Russia. This was reported by The Guardian on Saturday. When asked if European troops would be willing to engage with Russia militarily if it attacked Ukraine after a future peace deal, Stubbs said, quote, "That is the idea of security guarantees by definition. Security guarantees, in essence, are a deterrent, and that deterrent has to be plausible, and in order for it to be plausible, it has to be strong. And that means also strategic communications, so we're not making security guarantees into the air, but we're making real security guarantees, and Russia knows that," end quote. So Finland, which is a new NATO member, they joined in 2023. They have an over 800-mile border with Russia. They've been on board with this idea of security guarantees and sending troops to Ukraine, and they've been involved in these talks with the UK and France and all these other European countries that are calling themselves the coalition of the willing. And, they're doing this, pushing this agenda despite the objections from Russia, despite Russia making it clear that they're never going to go for any deal like this. And also, there's a risk of nuclear war here. If you're talking about troops from NATO countries fighting Russia, that's what you're risking. You're risking nuclear war. So it's really crazy, the attitude that you see from these European leaders. But Stubbs said it doesn't matter what Russia thinks. He said, quote, "Russia has absolutely no say in the sovereign decisions of an independent nation state. So for me, it's not an issue. Will Russia agree or not? Of course they won't, but that's not the point," end quote. So Stubb, who took office in 2024, was in the U.S. last month, and he joined several other European leaders in an Oval Office meeting with President Trump to discuss potential security guarantees for Ukraine. And after the meeting, Trump suggested that he would be willing to back European troops on the ground in Ukraine with air power. And this insistence, I think, is going to be what kills the chances for a peace deal. Russia's made clear they're perfectly happy to continue the war if they don't get what they want. They made some concessions when it comes to their initial demands when it comes to the territory. but they're not going to accept, troops from NATO countries being deployed in Russia in large numbers like this. Being deployed in Ukraine, I mean. All right, so the next one here, Iran may suspend IAEA cooperation over sanctions. So Iran's Supreme National Security Council said on Saturday that the UK, France, and Germany's effort to reimpose UN Security Council sanctions on Iran may lead Tehran to suspend cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA. So basically what they're saying here, on Friday, there was a vote in the UN Security Council to permanently lift sanctions on Iran. And if that resolution passed, it would have blocked the snapback sanctions that these European countries are trying to impose. That vote failed. So unless something changes, unless the UK, France, and Germany decide to delay the sanctions will be imposed on Iran on September 28th. And Iran is saying, so you have these three European countries. They're saying, we're going to impose these sanctions on you unless you do this and this. And one of the things they say is they want them to resume cooperation and inspections with the IAEA. So Iran signed a deal a couple weeks ago, to saying that they're going to resume cooperation with the IAEA, letting their inspectors back in. They don't have access to all the nuclear sites yet, but they're saying they're going to work it out. But they're still going ahead with the sanctions. So essentially what Iran is saying here is that you're saying you want us to do the stuff with the IAEA, but you're still pushing these sanctions even though we made this deal. So you know what? Once these sanctions go on, that's going to be it. And of course, these sanctions make another Israeli-U.S. war on Iran much more likely. So again, they could be going into effect in about a week. All right, so the last story here, the Saudi-Pakistan Defense Pact is redrawing power lines. So this article is from Middle East Eye, and really what I wanted to focus on here. So the Saudis, Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, they just signed a new defense pact, a mutual defense treaty, which means if you're attacked, you treat it as an attack on both countries. So this is really interesting because Pakistan has nukes, and this is a Muslim majority, two Muslim states signing a deal like this in the face of all this Israeli aggression in the Middle East. The Saudis say that they were working on this deal for a long time, and that it was not signed and announced in response to any events in the region, but it did happen right after Israel bombed Qatar. And of course, Israel has nuclear weapons. Unlike Iran, Israel actually has a secret nuclear weapons program. But Pakistan said they were actually asked about the nuclear aspect of this deal, and Pakistan's defense minister confirmed on Friday that his country's nuclear program would be made available to Riyadh as part of the agreement. So they're saying that Saudi Arabia is going to fall under the Pakistan's nuclear umbrella, the same way NATO countries fall under, the U.S. nuclear umbrella. Which again is very interesting, just considering what's happening, in the region. All right, so that is it for the news for today. Please go check out our viewpoints. One from Trita Parsi: Europe uses Iran as pawn in transatlantic power play. One from Dan Steinbach: Smotrich's apocalyptic decisive plan. One from JD Hester: the time Israel assassinated a non-violent Christian poet. One from Doug Bandow: renaming the Defense Department is a good first step. Our spotlight from Sarah Awad: my family managed to stay in our home in Gaza City until now. So please go check all that out. We have a ton of stuff in the lower part of the page. So much news. This happened this weekend. I covered a lot of stuff on the top of the page, but there is still so much stuff. Just, lots of stuff going on. But I want to mention again the Integrity Media Award thing. It was really cool, and that is the group Integrity Media that put it on. I met Jimmy Dore was there. He won an award. Julian Assange, he wasn't there, but he won an award, and his brother Gabriel Shipton accepted it for him. So it was cool to meet Gabriel. He did a lot of work for his brother while he was still locked up. Let's see, I'm kind of out of it right now, so I'm blanking on all the other people I met. But I got to hang out with Scott Horton, which was cool. It was only the second time we met in person, and this time we actually really got to hang out. I sat next to Alexander Mercouris of the Duran, who does really great daily videos and has really a lot of knowledge, particularly about the Ukraine conflict. So I sat between him and Scott Horton at this event. It was really cool. And he says he reads antiwar.com every day. I met Bob Scheer. He also won an award, who's a legendary journalist, and he runs Sheer Post now, and they reprint a lot of our stuff. And it was really cool to meet him. I met Ray McGovern. Who else was there? Kim Iverson was there. Did I say Jimmy Dore? I think I said Jimmy Dore. Man, I'm really like blanking out. There was a lot of other people there, but it was a good time. It was cool to be in Chicago. It was my first time that I spent time in the city, and it was cool. Oh, Aaron Mate from the Gray Zone. He was the MC. It was cool to see him. And speak with him. Janine Eunice, who she's a civil liberties lawyer who's been doing a lot of really good work on the attempts to deport people for their criticism of Israel. So it's cool to meet her in person. Again, a lot of other people. Good event. Going and meeting people and it really recharges your batteries and it's good to do once in a while. But anyway, that's it for me for today. Again, thank you so much to everybody who helped us with our fundraiser. I will be back tomorrow. Again, regularly scheduled program this week. Alexander from the Duran. So he does the Duran with the other Alex, but he also does his own show on YouTube, which is like an hour and a half every day. He makes me feel like a slacker because he was still doing a show in his hotel room for like putting out hour episodes. But anyway, that is it for me for today. I will be back tomorrow with some more news. Thanks for listening.